Hi guys, and welcome to Breakdown to Europe Units Analysis. Today we're going to analyze Michele and see how good she is. I'll try to include stats and type discussion in the video and hope it won't be too long for you guys to watch. So let's start off with some tests to see how her attack animation, her little skill, and her Brave Birds work. As usual, I'll start with Brave Bird's fill rate test with an Aisha 5-star as leader. I'll bring along 2 Kikuri Oracle for little skill and Brave Bird's test. Since they have exactly the same attack and they deal 10% of total damage for each hit, it will be much easier for all the calculation. Now, back to the Brave Bird's fill rate test. The result is 9 turns or 18 battle crystals needed, which is a real low battle crystal cost if you ask me. But unlike Melcher, her battle crystal cost will not reduce when we level up her Brave Birds, and you will see why soon. Now, let's take a look at her attack animation. A total of 12 hits, which is a really high hit count at the moment. Her normal attack damage will be distributed as 8% for the first 9 hits, then 2 hits at 10%, and the last hit at 8%. Indeed, in the video, we see 149 damage for the first 9 hits, then 187 for 2 hits, then 149 damage again for the last hit. However, her attack animation is not as good as her hit counts, since the first 9 hits are quite slow, and then there's a little delay before the 10th and 11th hit, then another delay again before the last hit. With a slow attack animation and 2 delays, it's very hard to spot with her attack animation. Now, let's move on to the most interesting part of the analysis. I'll make some tests to see how her Brave Birds and her little skill work, and at the same time I'll show you how different buffs are applied and how damage are calculated in this game. Okay, let's start with her Brave Birds. In the description, it says boost attack and adds fire elements to attack for all allies for 3 turns. So I'll test the attack buff with 2 Kikuri Oracle on thunder mobs, so no elemental weakness will be applied here. On average, my 2 Kikuri hit 155.5 per hit, but with Michele's Brave Birds, their average damage is 318 per hit, which is like having 105% boost on their base damage. And the theoretical boost is 100% at Brave Birds level 10, so as you can see, we are quite close to that number. And on a side note, you can see that the buff attack icon appears only after the animation ends, so that means you'll have to wait until the animation ends before attacking with another unit. Now, let's go for a second test. This time, I'll hit Earth modes to see how elemental weakness affects the damage calculation. Still 155 damage per hit on average for my 2 Kikuri. Now, let's use Michele Brave Birds. My Kikuri average damage is now 453 per hit, which is 292% of their damage without Brave Birds. You might ask, why is that is almost 300% when elemental weakness only add 50% damage and the attack buff should add 100%, which should be 250% in total? Well, the answer is quite simple. Elemental weakness boosts the final damage, while the attack buff only applies for attack stats. In other words, Michele attack buff adds 1% to Kikuri's attack, which makes it 200%, and then the elemental weakness adds 50% of the buff attack stats, which is now 200%, so that makes another 100%. The result is 300% of the base damage. So, we can now divide buffs into 2 categories, stats buff and damage buff. And a final thing about her Brave Birds. Leveling up her Brave Birds will not decrease your battle crystal cost as I mentioned before, but it increases her attack buff from 50% at level 1 to 100% at level 10. That's the highest attack buff in the game so far, so you better level up to level 10. And trust me, it's worth the effort. Now, Let's make a third test to see how her little skill works. Her little skill boosts 50% to attack power to all units when 5 elements or more are present. As you can see in the last test, with 4 different elements, my Kikiri average damage is only 155 per hit. And now, with 5 different elements, my Kikiri average damage is 233.7 per hit, which is roughly 50% boost, just like in the description. So you will need 5 different elements in your team for it to work. A pretty restrained condition for a little skill, right? But with this little skill, you can finally make a rainbow team. Now let's use her Brave Burst to see how the damage is calculated. Okay, so my Kikiri average damage is now 588.7, which is only 252% of damage without Brave Burst. Why is not 200% like last time? It's because her little skill is a stat buff and not a damage buff. You can see in details how damage is calculated in this case in the note I made just to the right of the video. Lastly, I want to show you how powerful and useful her buff is. So I'm going to put 2 videos at the same time, just like last time, to show you the difference. On one side, my Kikiri team with Michele, and on the other side, my Kikiri team with Michele and Michele. Let's see the performance. As you can see, after 2 turns, the team without Michele only managed to take down 3/4 of Zebra's HP, while the team with Michele almost killed him. Actually, I made 2 crit hits with my team with Michele, but that shouldn't affect the results by a lot. So as you can see, the difference in damage is a lot. So if you want to boost your team damage to another level, you should definitely bring Michele. Due to the nature of her Brave Burst, she'll be used as support more than offensive units. So if you want to bring her to arena, only use her as leader and when you have 5 different elements in your team. Otherwise, she's not really useful in arena because an AoE Brave Burst is still better than her attack buff. But she really shines in PvE as you can see in the test I just made. Knowing that, let's take a look at her stats and see which type is best for her. Let's focus on her lot stats first. 4.8k HP, 1.66k attack, and only 1.2k defense, and almost 1.6k recovery. So as you can see, she has an offensive orientated stats. Therefore, her best type would be Anima because she already has high recovery. 1.5k HP will boost her survivability up by quite a bit, while 1.4k recovery is more than enough to heal her. Guardian would be next to cover her low defense. With this type, her defense reaches almost 1.4k, and yet her attack is still good at 1.5k. Next would be Lord then Breaker, because you don't want to lower her defense to 1k, which makes her really fragile for PvE now. And the worst type for her is obviously Oracle, since it increases recovery which is already high and reduce her HP, hence her survivability. So I would say aim for Anima, Guardian, and Lord. Breaker and Oracle will make her too fragile for PvE now and in the future. So now I would like to finish the analysis with a little conclusion. Her attack has 12 hits, which is really high at the moment, so she can generate a lot of battle crystal. And she also has a really nice little skill for those who are tired of mono elemental teams and want to make a rainbow team. She also has a really useful Brave Burst because it adds attack buff that will boost your damage much further. And to add to that, her Brave Burst only requires 18 battle crystals, So it is quite easy to maintain the buff for the team, and also her second buff adds fire element to the team, which can be really useful against earth boss when you don't have a mono fire team. And the best thing about her is that she'll be the best attack buffer for a really long time. But her only downside is that her attack animation is slow and really hard to spot. Her little skill is quite restrained, since you will need at least 5 different elements, and her Brave Burst doesn't deal damage, but it will change in the future with her Super Brave Burst. What else I can say about her? Well, she is a really must-have unit, especially if you want to make a crit team or a rainbow team. A really good investment as well for now and for the meta game in the future. So be happy if you have her, and if you don't, wait for her summer rate boost and get her. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe or join us on Brave Frontier Europe forum if you like the video and want to know more about the game.